Good evening and welcome back to the shop. Tonight I'm going to continue playing around with circles, no pun intended, but last time we made a frame like this and we didn't finish the whole rounding out process, but tonight I want to push it a little further and develop this concept. I also want to talk about a different way of making a round segmented frame like this that's simpler and it doesn't require expensive machinery. Last time I described a spectacle mirror idea I have for over the sink, over a double sink. I'm going to have these two segmented cherry frames. They're going to be shaped a little nicer than this, but these are going to be centered above the two sinks, and there's going to be a bridge over here like spectacles. So you've got to use your imagination. That's what this is all about. And you'll come up to the mirror and you'll be looking into the mirror, but you'll have this strange sensation that something is looking back at you. So anyway, I think it's going to be fun. But I thought, after last week when we made this little round, it occurred to me that these little rounds that I'm making to explore segmented circle making could be a great little kind of test of concept where we could explore how this looks, before we go all the way with the big one and put it on the wall. This time we're going to make a segmented frame, but we're going to do it differently. We're going to do it by stacking two pieces that are half the thickness. So we're basically going to do the old brick lay technique. Now, in order to do this, instead of starting out with 3/4 inch stock like this, where we segmented and then we end joined these to come together, we're going to start out with two layers, half the thickness. So these are two pieces, 3/8 thick, same dimension, and we've got them stacked. Now this is interesting because I kept these in order. So these are resawn, and I don't know if you can see it, but the grain flows perfectly. So we've got perfectly matched resawn material. So these were stacked in the board. So they're the same right down through. So what I'm going to do is number these while they're in this good shape. I'll number them so you can see it. And I'm going to go right across the front. There's a little bit of a repeated last time, but I'm going to show you some other tips here. And this is a different technique that goes quite quickly. So I want you to see the whole thing. All right, so there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We only need to number the 4 right now because we are stacking them. Now on the end here, I'm going to make an arrow. This is a good reference so I know how they were positioned initially for each one. And the arrow has to go back together for them to be where they were before they were resawn. So I'm just going to stick this here and I'll go ahead and number these as well. And all right, so there we go. Now we're just going to cut them to rough length, and then I want to show you on the table saw a little different tip while we're working on that. Now, if you recall last week, we made this little jig to hold the workpiece. We've got 8 joints, so each one of those joints is a total of a 45-degree angle, but the angle is shared by 2 ends, so we need to halve that to 22.5 to give us the angle we need to cut on each end of those 8 segments. So we're going with the 22.5, and I've got a little piece here that I tacked on, and the kerf in my sled, it gets a little worn out over time, so it was a little bit choppy on the exit cut on those pieces. not really big blowout or anything, but it's worth it to just put a little temporary zero clearance to your sled. And you can quickly fix that by just taking a piece. I just got a piece of 1/4-inch stock here, and I'm just going to pin nail it. The old pin nailer. Now I'm going to just square each end, but see what I did? I put this little piece here. This is going to get cut on the first pass, and that is going to be zero clearance to the blade. So that's going to be a nice tight fit for every cut. So I'm not going to experience that kind of tear out underneath and behind on the cut. So I'll go ahead and get all these set, and then we'll put our stop in and get the other end. I'm supposed to be using this. Probably a lot of you noticed and said, what a dummy. He's not using his hold down. And you're right, I wasn't. I was so I trimmed that piece off, of course, without it, and I got going. And it's not often that I have this here, so I totally forgot about it. So I was holding them firmly, though. Don't you worry. I could retrim them, but I don't think we really need to. But I should have done that. That was really dumb. All right, so now that I've done that, we're going to trim the other end, but here we need the stop. So actually we're going to flip end for end like this, so we get the same kind of outside miter. And I'm going to bring in my stop, and I have the old location marked here. We want the same thing. And we're going to switch out to the little larger Grex for this thicker material. So, okay, that just gives us a nice stop right there. So this time I'm going to bring it in, push it up to the stop, and then I'm going to push down my little toggle clamp and cleanly make the cut. So now we're going to continue and glue up our new double-layered segmented frame. So let's get organized and get things back to where they were. There's our ones, there's our twos. So these right across the top are all from the same family, and the ones below are the same, but they're one layer away. So if I just glued these edges up here on the top, I would have a beautiful, harmonious joint to joint. Now here's what we're going to do. Instead of gluing this one face up, let's just bring this around like this now. We're going to flip this one so it's going to be a mirror of this end. So you know that that grain will match up nicely with that. And now as we flip this, we're also going to get the perfect match because these, as we just talked about, are in line. And 4. And then look, when we get to 4, it's the same thing. We're flipping, we're getting the mirror match on 4. So here we go. We're going to glue these up, and you end up with a beautiful end grain match all the way around when you use this flipping method. Last time, we used the thick material, and we used the old veneer technique, which, if you're interested in that one, check it out, because we showed the segmented end method. But now that I've got them in this shape, I'm just going to keep them in this order and go ahead and start gluing them. This is great. No joinery, no messing around. Just get some kind of quick set glue. I'm not going to use the thick and quick because it's too thick, but this yellow grabs pretty quickly. This wood is pretty dry, but so you need a nice ample amount. And then you're going to put it on the joint and then rub fit, so you get this kind of suction as you move it, and you can feel it grab when you do the little rub fit. And then I'm looking to get it absolutely flush on the end point, okay? That's critical for it to all line up in the end. But if you cut them with that super accurate jig, there's no worries of a lineup. Here we go, next. Rub fit, you're getting that nicely distributed to the other side, and then you start to feel, it's kind of like a suction from the liquid and the viscosity of it all. It just, then just leave it alone. You don't have to clamp this.
Could CA glue work, Tom?
Yeah, you could do CA glue too, but I don't really, I think this is easier. If you were using the CA glue, you'd be spraying the accelerator and all that, and it's more expensive, and I think this is actually easier than the CA glue for this type of thing. So I'm just going to spin this around so I'm in the same direction.
Any concern it's going to glue to the MDF?
If you noticed, right after I did each one, I slid it a little bit. You could wax the MDF first. You do get a little squeeze out on the back, but watch, I'll do this one again. And I'm bringing it together, and I'm giving it a nice rub fit, and then get that point nice and flush. And then see how I'm moving it? So I do have a little bit, but like this whole thing will move easily if you just slide it right at first. Then you can quickly scrape your, there's a nice work table, just a piece of MDF, so no big deal. And again, let's go somewhere. But see how fast this is? I'm not having to cut any joinery. I'm not having to do any of that. One more. Alrighty. Now, you just got to leave it alone for a little while, and it'll set up. I'm going to slide them over here. All right, so here we are. We've got our, this one was also in that same alignment, see? And they're all glued up 1 through 4, and then we flip, and now we just have to glue these two ends. Now, if you find that it's slightly off, you can just lightly sand out to the point, but if you've got it fairly accurately set, you should be good. I did a little touch of sanding on the heel here. Didn't take much at all, and it was good to go. So now we're ready, and for this one, I'm going to use just a piece of tape, stretch it across there, because it's hard to give it the same rub fit as the others. So we'll get that on there nice.
What are your thoughts about gluing one surface instead of two? Ever talked to Bob Van Dyke about that?
There are times you want, you really do want to glue two. When you glue an edge to edge and you do a rub fit, you're gluing both sides. So I don't know.
I think he was curious if Bob Van Dyke ever gave you any tips on that.
I don't think Bob Van Dyke would argue with this. I mean, he knows. He's just trying to make sure that you get enough glue on both surfaces, and you can see that if it's squeezing out like that, believe me, it's on both surfaces. So, and it depends what the purpose is, but the rub fit and you get an even squeeze out, you know you're good. All right, so I've got those aligned, but I'm going to use this green tape to give me a nice little pull. There you go. Now I know that by stretching the tape, I know I'm getting a little bit of a clamping tension there. But again, this is not super critical. These joints are quite close together. One thing I noticed from last week was I got a number of comments from segmented bowl turners and vase turners because they're very familiar with this type of operation where you're gluing up segmented stacking for bowls and whatnot. And this is the way to go. Like, you just need to make sure your angles are good, and you make all these rings, and then you glue them up brick laid like this, and you can have a fancy little jig that presses them down. I know Claude is amazing at that kind of thing. Claude Dupuy. If you don't follow him on Instagram, you're missing out. You're missing some really good photos of
Canterbury Turnings.
Canterbury Turnings, yes. All right, so I'm going to get this out of the way because I have 2 more that can come out of the oven, and we're ready to roll. So now I'm going to get the green tape off. And while I do that, I'm going to make sure I scrape any glue residue there. Boy, this stuff, it's almost like wood you'd find that had been stored in the attic for years, you know, that like cedar shakes. They were in the attic for years. It was just a little bit fractious. All right, so I've got these arrows. So this is my top. And what I'm going to do now is glue them, but I'm going to stagger the rings and eyeball it and get it really close so all these spaces are the same. And I'm about halfway there, and we're going to glue this together. So that's easily done just by going to use a couple, like a caul. This will be my lower caul, and I'll just clamp these on top. Let's get some glue on there, and we'll be in business. So I'm going to just use this little roller. This thing, you know, it's one of those that made to screw on the top of a glue bottle, and you can squeeze it, and it comes out the hole and rolls. Whenever I use it that way, then I have to clean up the whole thing. So I get to use it just in my hand, and I'll just get the glue on the surface and use it as basically a quick little roller. And here we go. There we go. Now she's flowing. That's a note to self, you know, clean the glue bottle before. I put a lot on here, but you know, I'm not worried about that because this is super dry wood, and I want this to distribute to the other side because I'm not gluing the other side. I hope that's okay. All right, so there we go. And now we're just going to eyeball this and set it on there. And I'm looking for all these little triangles to be about the same. Now, I'm just going to give it the rub fit. And that, man, that is distributing the glue really nicely. But this is basically like a bricklaying technique. So now you're getting this staggered frame and creating an incredibly strong frame. So let me get that straightened out there. And after this is cured, we're not going to saw this one out. And I don't actually have a glued staggered one. But once it's all cured, we're going to bring this over and see that'll fit on the ring. And we've got enough meat all the way. So all this gets cut off. It's really the same amount of waste. It's just looks like more because it's 2 layers, but it's half the thickness. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now I'm going to use a caul here. I'm just got this disc that we'll use to set it on, keep it flat. And once I like to make sure that it's tacked up enough so it's not going to be greasy, and that feels pretty good. So now I'm just going to put on just a couple scrap pieces of wood. These are just 6 inches wide, and that's getting me the full width. And I just need to throw a few clamps on here. And this is just clamping it right like a sandwich. All right, so I'm just going to lightly snug them right now because I'm giving the glue that amount of time, because when you get a lot of surface glue like that, it can do this slow crawl and slide away from where you wanted it. I could tack it, but I didn't want to put any nails in there, so I got to be routing and whatever. Just lightly snugging these. All right, so there we are. We're all kind of pressed on there. And then I'd go around and start snugging them up.
Dean's curious if that would be a good candidate for the vacuum bag.
Yeah, you could do that in the vacuum bag too, Dean. Absolutely. For that, I would definitely tape or tack, just because when it gets in the vacuum bag, you can't always see it. But this is a good manual way. You don't need a vacuum bag necessarily if you just got some platens, a piece of wood. But there we are. We got our sandwich, and I'll set that aside. So we are now going to cut this round into shape. So I want to give it a little shape like our final mirror. Now last time we talked about making this template. This is our 12-inch diameter, outside diameter round, and we made it so that it would fit for a 10-inch round piece of mirror. So that's the idea, for that to go in and be a mirror. Unfortunately, I didn't get it all finished for you to see that tonight, but so next week I will show you the finished concept. But we are going to look at the concept here in a second, so didn't get it all the way finished, but that's the tease, right? So anyway, we've got this we need to get to the final round. So I pre-cut this inner roughing on the bandsaw before we glued it up, because it saves me from having to jigsaw that out. Now, when you do the stagger technique that we just did, you'll lay this on and you'll center it, and you'll have to draw the circle in the middle and on the outside. Here, we're just going to go on the outside. So I want to leave, I'm centering on this rough cut circle that I already have in there. And now I can draw the circle on the outside. I'm just going to leave the line when I cut this. I can leave the line a little heavy as I draw this on here. There we go. Okay, so now we're all set. So I'm going to go ahead and bandsaw that out, and then I'll show you a cool tip to shape this on the router table. Too bright? Okay, so back here at the bench, we've got our round, and what we're going to do is now shape it to the accurate shape of this round. We could make a jig or something to hold this, but we could also just clamp this or double stick tape it. You could double stick tape that little round to that and go over into a router table, or you could put it on the bench and use a flush bearing by clamping it and just kind of crawl around. Or you could use this method I like using, where you shoot a pin nail through there and then you snip it off. So I got a couple already in there, but I'm just going to show you the method. So that's a 1/2 inch pin nail. You can see it sticking out the other side. And if I just get...
By the way, can look at last week's episode to find out how Tom made this template.
Yeah, I didn't actually make it in that episode, but I did discuss it and I showed it, yeah. We have made templates in other episodes. So let's go ahead and shape this up, and then I'll show you my creation. This won't take too long. I'm going to just skim this around here. Now I'll use it on the bottom, so I minimize the holes on the top. And I'm going to just get the spacing so I can feel material, some of this thermally modified ash all around on both sides. I want to trim that right off. And then I'm going to press. And all those little points are going in there, and it's not shifting. So that's a way you can, just by those nubs, you get a pretty solid, you can always nail in too if you're not comfortable with that. Please do what you're comfortable with, what works. You can do a test, but that's going to hold it, and the flush bearing is going to ride against here. Let's head over to the router table, and I'll show you how this goes. I'm excited to show you my router table because I've been upgraded. Check this out. This is a spiral cutting bit. And now I've had this bit for a while. This isn't the upgrade, but this is an Infinity Mega flush cutting bit, and it's got the shearing angle to the cutter. This is a more recent thing. They haven't had these things out but recently, but a number of companies are making them where they're spiral cutters for the router. And they're not cheap. I mean, this one's about $90. But there are others that are not as massive as this, and they're maybe a little more spiraled, that are selling between $150 and $200 for one router bit, not unlike this. So this Infinity, I think, is quite nice. If I cranked it all the way up, you would see a bearing on the bottom as well. It's got a pretty nice cut, but it's 1.5 inches wide, so it's this mass. And I always got nervous when I turn on my other router. The router was underpowered. It didn't have a soft start. It just wasn't right for this, but I didn't have a motor for it. So I reached out to our friends at Woodpeckers, and they sent me, I spotted it on there, and they sent me they have these router motors called SpinRite. They're just designed to work with a router table. 3.25 horse with a soft start. So that's so much nicer with a bit like this. When I turn this on, you're going to see it just slowly kind of start. It's like a little delay, and then where the other one was, and with this bit, it was kind of a worrisome spin. Last thing I wanted to say was, motors are motors. They're a lot alike. But this motor, one of the things I really do like about it, the collet on this is first rate. It's excellent, and that's really one of the most important things about a motor. If you don't grab the bit strongly and well and true, it's dangerous and it's no good. The collet system on this is awesome, and you can buy other fittings for it. So it's the best collet I've ever had on a router or router table or anything. So I do like it a lot for that. Routers tend to be standard at about 22,000 RPMs. This has adjustments too, so you can dial this motor down. And once you get over 1.5 inches like this one, you want to dial it back to like 18,000 RPMs, which I did. So it's not running full out. And your narrower diameter, fine, run them all the way out, and you'll be fine. It's when you get those wider wing cutters, you've got you're multiplying the speed because you have a larger circumference. So for every rotation, the speed of that cutting edge is flying. So you just slow it down. It's like you're getting the same cutting performance with a slower speed. All right, here we go. Now, the bit is rotating counterclockwise as I'm looking down at it. So I'm just going to bring it in, keep my hands back, and I'm just going to rotate, and I'm going to let that ride on the bearing the whole way. Now, and after I get that, I'm going to just set it over, and this time, because it's spinning that way, I'm going to spin the other direction. I'm spinning always against the grain here against the spin. Here we are. All right, here goes the soft start. All right, this is a beautiful job, huh? I mean, look how smooth, zero tear out, even though you're going against the grain in a number of places there. And now, once you get to this point, it would look identical, except on the side you see the brick laid stack, which is kind of nice. I'll have that to show you next time, the one that's finished. But this is the segmented from last time. Now, I want to treat this, I want to give it some of the eyeglass appeal here. So I'm going to just show you a quick another router technique here using your table. So when you have something small and round like this, it's kind of tough to clamp it and route any distance if you're using a handheld router. Now, I could do this on the router table as well. You know, I could switch out the bits and all that, but I didn't want to do it. And when you're doing the back, I'm going to make a little rabbited recess for the mirror or the pictures, if you want to use pictures in here. So you need a rabbited recess, and then on the front, I'm going to do a nice 1/4 inch round over on both sides. So it gets roundish. There's going to be a flat in the middle, but it'll be kind of sweet, roundish on the front. Now this technique can be used when you're in a pinch, but I could also use the router table. I just want to show you this, okay? So I'm going to just hold this on another scrap piece of MDF. This is like a work table here, and I'll draw the outline of it. Am I getting it all there? Yeah. Okay, so there's my circle, and now I'm going to use the old pin nailer. I'm going to put these pins right near the edge, just inside the edge a little bit. And look, I'm using this spacer so that I won't have to snip them off. They'll be at the right height. So just pull that up.
That's your Grex.
Yeah, this is a Grex pin nailer. The P635. Anyway, I love these things. And so I want to put these right near the edge, and I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to end up putting more than I thought, but it's okay. All right. Now, these hardly show. It doesn't really matter if they showed, but by putting them like that, now I'm going to press the front. My round over should get rid of most of these because I've got them out far enough. So if I set it back to my circle, those are just sticking up, and they're like little razor pins. And so all I have to do is push down. You can hear it. And now it's like held really nicely. I'm ready to route right on there. And I'm going to start with the rabbet. This is the back. So I've got a rabbiting bit already set up here. I've got the, this is a CMT rabbiting bit, and we put a link to this if you want. We usually get questions about it. But it comes with a lot of different bearings, so you can have the amount offset you want. I couldn't find my 7/8 bearing. So I took my 3/4 and I wrapped it with green tape until it became a 7/8. That's what you do when you can't find things. But that has helped me a lot because sometimes you do want to change the bearing to an in-between that it doesn't come with. And there you go, you can do it with tape. All right, so this is a riser block. It's sort of like a wing, like an outrigger, right? It's made of the same thickness stock as the frame. So it's kind of hard to hold a router on a little narrow material like this, but you set it like this with the outrigger, and it's on the other side, it's on the frame, so I've got a beautiful, comfortable hold there. And I'm going to just start right around, and we'll go right around the back. Now this is going to get a little messy, but... So there you go, no clamps to move, just pick it up off the pins. Now, let me dust this off. Now we're ready to put it back on and work on the top. So you can barely see those pinholes, but where they're located, if I got them out far enough, most of them will get taken off by the 1/4" round over. If they're not, it's not even a big deal. That's the nice thing about the pin nailer, is it's almost invisible. All right, there we are. Let's set this router aside.
How'd you attach that block to the router, Tom?
Oh, that's on there with double stick tape. That's a great thing to have. So this is, it's a block like this, and it's just a cutoff from those segments. And so the double stick tape, peel it off, boom, you're good to go. So here's another one, other router, but here I have the good full 1/4" round over, and I'm going to go around the inside and then the outside, and then we'll talk concept. Just like that, we've created a sweet little frame. Now this could be a standalone frame, right? We could have done a little stronger round over if you want, but that's a nice little round frame. Get this sanded up, and I'm just going to put orange shellac. So we'll get a really nice amber into that deep brown of the ash there, and it's going to be rich.
Nathan's reminding you, and he's asking, what do you do with those pins?
Yeah, that's a good point, Nathan. No pun intended, because those little things will scratch your hands. But I'm just going to put this down on top of it so I'll remember that they're there.
Yeah.
You can just hammer them in. They're so small, and this is just a piece of work material anyway. All right, so what I want to show you in wrapping up, 2 or 3 people connected with me and said that last week when we did the round frames, they were reminded of this old historic mill down in Arlington, Massachusetts called the Schwalm Mill, and they have been making round and oval frames. Shoot, I'm going to get the date wrong, but like early 1800s, maybe even prior. I mean, the building was built, I think the first one was built in the late 1600s. It's crazy that the place is still in operation. You can take tours, but they're still making frames in there. And the weird thing is, I had the Fine Woodworking magazine issue. I had just been looking at this the week before, and this is out of all of them. This is number 58. And I grabbed this because I was looking up an article on French polishing, and there on the cover is the Schwalm Mill. And this is a man turning an oval frame. They have like this eccentric kind of spindle that makes it turn. The panel spins in an elliptical pattern. So you just hold the chisel in the singular space, and there you go. But to prepare for this, you're doing it the same way as you are here, except you're cutting the segments into these oval shapes, and they're rough and they're large, oversized. And then they have a special cutter where they basically finger joint the joints. So they're strap clamped with the glue, and they're finger jointed together. And there's areas of this old shop that are just coated with hide glue like crazy, like all over the place. But now they use Titebond or something like that. But they get them glued up, they slap them on there, and then they turn them round. So it's a different process. It's turning. So if you want to put a molding surface on there, like imagine if we wanted a molding, you couldn't really route it out the same way. I mean, certain ones you could. A simple round over is easy, but if you wanted to make a bead and then a cove or something fancy like that, you gotta turn it so that it's spinning and it's coming like that. I've done that a few times in my custom furniture world where I've turned on large faceplate, and I wanted to show you, here's a piece that I made with that kind of faceplate turning. This is a clock that I made some years ago. I can't remember how long ago. It's going to be 15. Anyway, but it's veneered out of San Domingan mahogany, but the top I wanted to be contemporary. What I started with was the works. It came out of a big clunky old clock, but that was a really cool French kind of movement, and that diameter of that was, I think it was like 13 inches across. It was a huge clock, big. And but I decided to make everything kind of radiate, rounded around that face frame, and leave the whole thing open so you can see that beautiful pendulum. But on the top, rather than a flat top, I wanted a rounded crown. So that is the arc that follows the same radius. It's just as if the center of the clock face was our axis for striking our arc. Okay, if all these arcs were struck off that same line. So when I got out here to make this piece, I have done them with routers in several ways on old like period pieces when you have like swan necked of broken arch pediment type pieces. You can do it that way, but it's a lot of work and you're scraping and all that. If you can figure out a way to get it on the lathe, then you can turn that But of course you need the whole thing. And you know, I remembered that in the library upstairs, I have the rest of that. Here's what I actually used to turn that.
That's cool.
Isn't that crazy?
That's cool.
This is the part I used on that clock. And this is also mahogany, and I didn't use the best over here. I had a nice piece over here. And this, I had to segment. I had to use pieces here. You know, it's not the same, but because that whole top is one unbroken piece, sort of like that. And then it's spinning on the lathe, and you're basically turning it on that edge. And this piece here, this was added on so it wouldn't wobble. It's like those little balancing pieces of lead or whatever they put on your tires when you get them balanced. You see those little things? That's what that is. Because I had to get this thing right. And so you're slowing it down because your speed out here is quite fast. But this was exactly it. So then I sanded it while it was spinning too, so I didn't have to do much when it came off. Once I cut that piece free, it was screwed on from the back. You can see the holes there. This one is actually screwed on as well. I used a lighter piece, a low grade up here. And then there it is. That's the other piece on there. So that's another way to make frames, but it's complicated. But I wanted to show you that. And lastly, let's look at where we're at with our glasses. So I had this drawing from my original. See, the coffee stains are still on it. There's the sinks, and this is kind of the size of those rings, and then I had the nose piece and everything. I decided to use these little frames that we're making for this experiment here with segmented rounds and scale it and see what it looks like. So let me come over here. I've got a drawing, a to scale drawing right here. So here's our new frames. This is these guys to scale. So there you go. You got your little Poindexter glasses, your little nose piece, and those little pieces to look like the end, right? All right, so now I made it full-size drawing because I needed to calculate some of these curves. What? This nose piece has to fit just right against this arc on both sides.
So funny.
So you needed to have the full size for this. So I have here is our main circle. And then this little arch is tighter. This is only a 3-inch radius, so much smaller. And I actually had to get that out of a 6-segmented because I wanted the grain. So here you go. This darker wedge here, this is that inner ring. So that's for the nose bridge. Every joint is 60 degrees, which is shared by 2 pieces, so each side is 30. So you have to set that up to cut your 30 degree or 60. Anyway, you set up a 30 degree wedge on your table like this. So this is the one I just modified it. It's a little steeper. So I ended up with 3 pieces. That way the grain was going to run. This is a little tricky because you end up with this piece with these really pointy fibers here. So I wanted the grain to be running down that way so it'd be strong enough when I did that little delicate cut at the end that would hang on and fit in there. Now my plan, I'll show you where I am so far. I've got 2 of them here. Let's just lay them right on the drawing and see how this looks. Okay, there's our outsides. Now for the nose, I had to make a smaller ring. I made the smaller ring pattern, and I had to create the segments, which I made here. I had a full round here, just a smaller version of what we just did. And then I made a template of our little nose bridge. Okay, so I could fit that in, and that would fit nicely against our rounds. Okay, this is the trickier piece. And then I used that, and this was a little trickier to route, but I skim routed that, and the whole round was made as one like that. Then I just did the ends on that. And so then you're ending up, this hasn't been rounded yet, but it'll be rounded like the frames. And it'll also dive down at the ends because we've got that round over there. And we're going to have it dive down so it meets the flat. And it'll look like, a regular nose piece on glasses that way. Kind of give it some more dimension going down like that. And then on the ends, we are going to have these little stubby guys. And the way these are going to attach, my plan is to use these little rare earth magnets. And they're going to go in. And set one's going to be there, and one will be over there. And next time, when you come back, we'll have it finished, and I'll even have round mirrors in there. I've got my round mirrors. I got these special little keyhole small guys. I'm going to join these with rare earth magnets so you're going to hang these at specific spacing. It has to be exactly, this one's going to be 17 3/4 apart. Perfectly for that screw. The screws have to be perfectly located, and then these hook on these eye holes, and then this will drop in, and it should just click into place with the rare earth magnets. So I'm going to bury these, and I'm thinking of plugging them so that you don't need to use the glasses method. You could take this off, which would also be a rare earth magnet right there, and just hang them alone and go with the rounds. All right, well, thank you so much for listening to me blabber on here, but I've really enjoyed this and what this can generate for us in our creative life. And it's just so nice to do it and be able to share it with so many friends. And it is like you're right here in the shop with me. So thank you for stopping by and giving this time. We couldn't do without you. And if you do enjoy this content, you haven't already subscribed, if you please consider doing that and sharing and liking, that's all good too.
And join our mailing list. We have some exciting things coming up in the next month you don't want to miss.
Yeah, over at epicwoodworking.com, we offer deals too that you wouldn't believe. So you want to be over there for that and our new announcements. So thanks again on behalf of the camera lady and myself. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.